Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I'll be taking a look at these three books that collect the Inspector Coke trilogy by the artist Dino Battaglia. Very excited about this release from Epicenter Comics. This is a collection of work by someone who inspired the person who's one of the most inspirational artists to me, Sergio Topi. I've never seen any of Dino Battaglia's work before. Really excited to get my hands on this and find out like the master that inspired one of my maestros that I look up to. So wasn't let down. This is very inspirational art. I'm going to start in book 3 though, because I don't want my comments about book 1 and 2 to feel like I'm knocking on the production job that Epicenter Comics did. I want to talk just a little bit about reproduction because there are some issues in here, but there's also some things done really well. So I don't know how well this shows up on screen, but anyone who has this will know that if you're looking at the end papers, like in this volume 3 one, I mean, you can see the pixels. The pixels are big. Like I have my glasses off. I'm looking at it from a distance, and you can see the pixelization in this. But at least this one's printed in like a halftone, and so that carries over into the artwork in the book. And the artwork in the book looks really nice. And I'll talk more about that as I flip through. Each one of the books has a series of essays in the front that are really enjoyable. They have a lot of cool content in them, stuff about his personal life, stuff about professional influences, pictures with other artists like Hugo Pratt and Sergio Topi, things like this where you're seeing sketches. So really helpful and informative essays, and a lot of reproduction of original art. So I know for a fact that they have access to original art, at least on some pages. I don't know about all pages. On this volume here, you can compare some of the original art to the printed art. And in volume 3, they've done a really stunning job of the reproduction. That's why I wanted to show volume 3 first, because whatever was done on volume 3 is done way better than what's done on volume 1 and 2. It's the same people producing. So I assume that what happened is that volume 3, they actually had access to all the original art, even though this was made in 1983, same year as volume 2. Dino Battaglia never actually finished this volume. Another artist stepped in and finished this volume. So I'm suspecting that maybe like the original art didn't get sold on this one and they had easier access to it. And you can see that basically the artwork looks the same. They've just gotten rid of the coloration on the page, but all of the tonal ranges and the subtlety of the grays and stuff has been preserved, and it's reprinted very nicely in this volume. I think it is half-toned rather than put with the diffusion dither, but it's okay. It looks totally fine, and the preservation of the grays is really important because, as you can see, Battaglia has this very interesting technique where he does a lot of like stippling almost, and in one of the volumes they show, I think it's in volume 2, I have it pieced off, where they show his technique for that, and it was mostly using a piece of cotton that he would get ink on, like a cotton ball, and then get it dry and just tap. So there's a lot of really subtle grays going on here that almost look like an ink spray, but even more subtle than that. And it's really important to capture that because he's doing so much beautiful stuff with the atmosphere. You can see the atmospherics throughout here. Very easy to see looking at these how this artist influenced Sergio Topi when you're looking at the stark black and white with the gray in between, the shape work, just kind of the way that the balloons work, the lettering and everything looks very Topi. You look at a page like this and you'll see some of that in the composition, especially when Battaglia goes and drops the panel borders in places. That's where you start to see Topi picking up on that and being like, okay, now I'm going to construct a whole page with no panel borders, potentially using this shape play. So beautiful stuff. And you can see a lot of just really great ink slinging throughout, nothing super tight. And then you have all of this beautiful atmospheric work with the scratching and whatnot over top of it. Beautiful compositions. So yeah, like absolutely inspirational work. And then here's another page in this volume 3, a little bit more open and airy. And again, you can see in the line work quality, the way that the birds are used, the composition, the grass, the rocks, like all of these kind of textural elements that Topi picked up on. The thing that's not in here to such an extent is the crazy line work that Topi has. I'm still not sure, other than Gustav Klimt or whatever, where he was getting that from. But the like base layer of Topi drawings before he starts hatching all over it is pretty much a Dino Battaglia drawing, and I can see that now. Like, this to me looks like a Topi page without much hatching on it, you know, and he would do some of these same textural tricks as well. Then in this volume, like I said, you get the first 21 pages are done by Dino Battaglia, and then an artist named Corrado Roy takes over. And Corrado Roy does a really, really good job of mimicking Battaglia's techniques. Obviously has that cotton stamp technique down, and then expands on the techniques a little bit. There's some more like smudging. There's some stuff where I think washes are being used. So it's an interesting thing because it looks like a lot like Battaglia, but say, okay, now he evolved for a couple more years or something. Like on this page, you can see there's this ink wash area. It's not just all the splatter tones. And so you get some really interesting evolutions of the style in another artist's hand. You get some more like Jay Lee type of scratching and splattering of the inks and things. But I really like the look. I actually think that Corrado Roy is a little bit more competent with figures. That's I'll talk about in one of the other books, but that's the only thing I see in here that's bothersome is sometimes the figures are a little clunky by Battaglia, and Corrado Roy seems to have a better structural understanding of humans and then is applying the style on top of it. So that's really, really interesting to see. But this volume 3 is beautifully produced, beautifully printed. I wanted to show that in comparison to volume 1 and 2 because in volume 1 and 2 the printing's not as good for whatever reason. My guess is, and it probably again you can see this really blurry image here, it seems like Battaglia has a very shaky line quality anyways, so that's already contributing to a slightly like pixelated look. When you see it well produced, it doesn't look as pixelated. You see he just kind of has a shaky line, and that's fine. But on these volumes, the artwork's been adjusted to pure black and white. They've gotten rid of the grays, and it takes those textures that he's done with the stamping and makes them quite a bit different. Well, this one's, no, we can't see. So again, I don't know how well this is going to show up on screen, but the reduction to just pure black and white takes that texture and turns all of the dots bigger. They kind of clump together, and there's just not as much subtlety in the variation of the values. The other thing it does is, like I said, it takes his shaky line weight and makes it look a little more pixelated. I don't think this is printed in pixels. I think this is like a off-on black and white. It's just that the way that the black and white has been done doesn't capture all the subtlety. I don't know what that's coming from, though. This might be a case where Epicenter Comics, because like in volume 3, the people doing the post-production obviously know how, or sorry, the pre-press production obviously know how to adjust this type of artwork to make it look beautiful. So I'm suspecting what's happening is they only have access to the photo negatives from the original art, and the photo negatives would have blown things out to this more black and white, I think. But it's hard to tell because there's still a lot of fidelity in the detail throughout here. So I'm not sure. The other thing is just that like it looks like you can see here how blurry the resources they have are. It looks like if they would have run some unsharp filter on it, they could have sharpened the image up a little bit for the black and white, which is something I know Sean does, is even if he's got negatives which aren't as great as the original art, he can still sharpen it up and play with the levels and get it to look a little closer to the original art. So I'm just not sure. I'm not sure what resources they had, but it still looks really nice. It's better than most reprints of things that have these kind of textures where they just totally black out. So they still had pretty good resources. It's just compared to the third volume, where you're really getting the full richness of the grays. This is a little bit harder to look at for my eyes, because they're really developed to be sensitive to those things. I just know what that looks like on an original page because I've done those kind of techniques myself. There's a lot of it in bound. And yeah, if you want to see it perfectly reproduced, get bound when that comes out. You'll see how it can be done. Or, get these, and the volume 3 is pretty damn good. The thing I was saying earlier about Battaglia's figures is sometimes his figure work, like this one here, the line work on it gets a bit clunky and everything's a bit sharp. That sharpness works really good for him compositionally, because it lets him block off shapes in more rectilinear shapes, and that makes the compositions more dynamic. But it does leave the figures feeling a little stiff and clunky to me. And actually, this page in particular, and this figure in particular, made me realize that this artist might be also a pretty big influence on Howard Chaykin. You go look at American Flag, and you had a lot of this like kind of thick, to me, like clumsy line work, but a real solid focus up composition, where the shape and composition is primary to everything else. And then also Chaykin's using that tone paper that the duotone paper, the duo shade paper, that had a texture like this on there. So that's actually pretty interesting to me as well, that this could be a source of inspiration for other people that I wasn't really aware of. But there's stuff like this face and this figure, that I don't think are the best figure work I've seen. But then you get to a page like this, where again the composition's on play, all of the textures are going on. You've got this really awesome bird here. This has some more of the kind of swirly line work that you could see maybe influenced Topi, that taking a more patterned look to things, and just some of the swirliness and textures that are going on in the trees. But you can see again Battaglia as this fantastic composer, and stuff like this would have been completely inspirational to Topi. This book was drawn in '83, so Topi was well working by then. Given that this is like at the end of Battaglia's career, the volume 3 being an unfinished work, I'm really excited and hopeful that Epicenter Comics will be doing more. They do a really good job. They have a whole line where they're reproducing these old masterworks from Europe that haven't been translated, like the Alvar Mayar series that I've done a couple of videos for a couple of the volumes with Enrique Breccia. I know they have a Carlos Trillo and Alberto Breccia book coming forward, and I hope that they have a lot more of the Dino Battaglia. I'm hoping they're doing more of the Breccias, both father and son. A lot of really important artists that are kind of finally getting their time in the light of an English translation, people that we've been missing out on. So really excited about this company, and really excited for more of these. And let's take a look at volume 2, because there's some interesting stuff in here as well, especially in the essays in this one. Here's a photo of Battaglia and Topi being inspired by Battaglia, and this is a drawing Topi did as a tribute after Battaglia died in 1983. So it's nice to get this kind of rare Topi drawing here, and that also helps you connect the two. It's got more Battaglia's line quality to it. It's a little less standardly Topi, but uses those Battaglia tricks and has some of the more psychedelic line work of the Topi in there. Quite a beautiful thing. Then on this page, you get a single page from some other book. This one is something they're referencing from another artwork that both the writer of this essay and Sergio Topi picked out as their favorite Dino Battaglia page, particularly this panel up here. It's the use of grays and the atmosphere that they're talking about in this one that they really love. And that technique, that look that he got, was accomplished by masking things off. And then you see here he has the cotton ball that he would get the ink on, and then just stamp it on something until it got the gray that he wanted, and then he would use that to do shading. A really fun technique, something that I was doing with sponges I was doing it with large sponges, and I think I was using some cotton balls here and there. But a really fun way of working that I was using quite a bit on Bound, and it does give you a lot of interesting grays, and it's both controlled and out of control, so it's quite a fun style to write. But really cool to see that, because when I was looking at his work, I was thinking, how the hell is he doing this? Like, what is this technique he's doing? I know similar things, like I know how I get the effect, but his has a smallness to it that I've not seen before. Or maybe it's just in the shrinking of the artwork. I don't know how big he works. Doesn't look like he's working very big based on this, given that this is the size of a cotton ball there. So, some really interesting stuff in the essay there. And then just showing some more of these fantastic compositions. This book is about the mummy. I'll say the stories, I'm going on and on about the art. I'll admit I read the first volume. The first volume is basically like a kind of Sherlock Holmesy type of mystery. This one is the same thing, Sherlock Holmesy meets the mummy. I think I got about 10 pages into this one, and I realized, okay, I'm just here for the art. Like, I don't need these genre stories. So to me, stories like really doesn't really matter to this. They're not bad stories. They're just not within a genre that I'm particularly interested in. What I am interested in, though, and what I'll keep going on about, is the artwork. I think this page here is a really good one to show the atmospherics as well. This second volume is reproduced in the same way as the first volume. So a lot of these textures, again, are blown out to like just black and white. They don't have the subtlety of the grays. But you can see that there's still this beautiful capture of like the foggy London back alleyways. Some really, really beautiful stuff going on here. And I would love to see, there's some of these that are in here, I would love to see them in the original art because of the subtlety that he gets. But like this effect here where he just scratches on top to make it look like it's kind of drizzling within the fog is really, really beautiful. So really phenomenal books, I think. Staggering, stunning artwork, and especially in this third one where the production's at its peak, there's something to really, really be learned from here. And like I said with the Topi stuff, this is my first peek into someone that inspired him. Given some of the peeks at the earlier artwork that he's done that are in some of these as well, I'm really, really excited and hopeful that Epicenter Comics will continue publishing collections of Dino Battaglia's work, because it's something that is well overdue here in the States.